what I want to do, if I've got time, is to introduce the fact that there are one or two packages, one or two programs around, nothing to do with Mathematica, that will scan a sheet music and convert it into something called Music XML. And the MusicGenerator package will have a stab. I'm not saying it's going to get it right in really complicated cases, but it'll have a stab at taking that representation and reading it in as a string into Mathematica, ready to do all the things that I'm showing. So you don't have to take a piece of sheet music and do all that. Can't remember whether I've done that already or not, but so I'm going to load the package, which is a free package from our website. So you can play with this later this afternoon if you want to. Okay, well, just briefly to set the scene as to why this is necessary, there has, of course, been a sound generation since version 2, and so in principle you could have generated music right back at version 2 of Mathematica. The problem is, of course, you had to generate a waveform to do that. Okay, so there was simple waveform to sound transforms, but the problem is obviously that you're a very, very long way from any music when you're at that level. And at version 6, an interface was supplied to the MIDI system, and this is the thing that powers Wolfram tunes. So it's had at least one major application, but I think when you think about scaling that up to inputting a whole piece of music, you can see the problems. And I think there's a very good analogy with graphics, because if you take just one line of graphics, like a list plot, that's a very compact way of representing the graph that you want to produce. But if of course you spill it out in input form, you can actually see the low-level graphics that produces. And not only is it much more voluminous, but a lot of the information is stored in a very opaque form inside floating point numbers. So I think there's a very strong analogy between that and the situation we've got regarding music. So here's a small piece of music, just 5 bars, and as you can see, it expands at the very least into quite a few sound note commands. Again, a lot of the information is encoded in floating point numbers, and therefore the whole thing is very, very opaque. You can't easily manipulate that and do anything interesting with it. So I'm kind of hoping that is the reason why there's not been much interest in doing anything musical with Mathematica. Okay, so let's get on to the actual syntax that the package uses. This is borrowed from something that a guy called David Coel produced. He produced a library called JFugue, and then there's his URL. It's modified a little bit, partly in ways that I think he's going to modify his system as well, because I've talked to him, but also in ways that relate to Mathematica, so that it's going to really kind of make it possible to do interesting things with Mathematica. So here's a very simple example which illustrates some of the syntax. Here we've got a G in the 3rd octave, so that's the G immediately below middle C, and it's a quarter note. The Q means it's a quarter note. then a space, which means these things are going to be played sequentially. So then we've got a G 1 octave higher up. Again, well, it's for a quarter note, but the dot works exactly like it does in sheet music. It extends it by half as much again in length. And then we've got a B flat for below middle C, and that's a half note. And finally, well, and then we've got a rest, which is the R, and again that's for a quarter note. And then we've got D sharp above middle C for a 16th of a note. Well, we don't expect anything brilliant from this, obviously, but don't have much sound volume there. Has the volume gone again? Oh, did I turn it down? Maybe I turned it right down. No, it's at max. Okay, well, could we get it a wee bit higher if we can? While you're doing that, I'll carry on, because that wasn't a very interesting piece of music anyway. So we've got the concept of a string with notes separated by spaces, and the syntax is hopefully extremely simple and rapid to type in. There are also directives which start with a letter which isn't a note letter and isn't an R. And one of these is the key K directive, which in this case is setting the key to be G major. And the idea is exactly like with a piece of sheet music, where you've got you can set the key, and that allows you. It means you don't have to put in all the accidentals in order to represent a piece of music. You can all the sharps and the flats that belong to the key that you're in just happen automatically, and the same concept is true here. So in this case, the F here becomes F sharp just because you're in G major. There's a tempo directive as well. And there are some more directives which I'll mention briefly, but I want to get onto the fact that obviously to do anything interesting you want some chords. Well, chords are just simply made by adding the notes together. So a plus means do it at the same time. And we can actually combine, for example, here are 3 half notes to be played at the same time as 2 quarter notes. The parenthesis notation allows you to really represent anything that you've got, any arrangement of notes that you've got on the sheet music. And you can think of, I mean, the plus is obviously meant to be an operator, but we are at the moment inside a string, so Mathematica doesn't think of it as being an operator. If the things on the opposite sides of a plus are of different length, then the result is the length of the longer. Okay, so if you play a quarter note plus a half note, then the half note will extend to its full value before the thing finishes and moves on to the next object. And numbered bars can be added as desired. They do 2 things. And you'll see the numbered bars in a second. They do 2 things. First of all, they make it a lot easier to actually type in a piece of music, because you can actually spot where you are in the structure. You know, if you're at bar 17, you know where you are. And the other thing is they give a little pulse of extra sound on the beat. Now that might need more elaboration. There's lots of potential elaboration to the package that I've written, and hopefully if people get interested, either you will elaborate it or I'll elaborate it to cover some more cases. Okay. So there are some more directives there. I'd possibly better, well, yeah, I'm probably all right. You can increase the volume. You can decrease the volume as well. There's the K directive. There's a directive which will allow you to specify what kind of instrument you're using, and I've got a fair bit more to say about that later on. And then there's the tempo directive. Okay, so here's a real example, and this is the example that I shut off a moment or two before. It's worth noticing that there's quite a lot of information in a piece of music like that. I mean, you've not just got you've got the notes, you've got their lengths. You've also got staccato, which means that you're going to play a note not for the full length of time, but the gap in the music is going to be the full length of time. So there's a little sort of space, if you like, beyond the end of the note. And so on. I mean, and there's also a repeat in there. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to do the mistake I made before and start that playing just as it is. I'm going to make the thing generate the sound object. I mean, by default it uses emit sound, which sends the sound straight off to the speakers, and you know, there's not much you can do about that then. So here's the result of that. Here's the object, and we can play as much of that. Probably better stop it there, because I could use at my talk just playing music. There's a bit of syntax in here that's worth looking at. First of all, here are the numbered bars, and there's I've introduced a concept which I think really is the concept that opens this all up, which is the concept of a music function. So a very simple music function is rep, okay, maybe it's a bit confusing, but I use round brackets for the functions, partly because this isn't a Mathematica expression at this point, it's a Mathematica string. So there's a repeat construct, and, well, somewhere or other, I'm not sure this is the one that corresponds to it, there's an argument 2 belonging to it, which means repeat it twice. In fact, repeat will take one argument if you want, and then it assumes 2. But the point is that functions can contain integer arguments, and they can also contain music, like chunks of music. So if you think about the syntax for the music, there's no role for a comma. So the comma will delimit the end of the piece of music, and the 2 is a numeric argument to repeat. I should say that I expect you've realized, but these strings are all concatenated together it just makes it a little bit easier on the eye rather than having the strings spilling over all the time. And unfortunately, there's not as much room on this PC as there was on the one where I set it up and on the screen, and so they do spill over anyway, but if you can live with that. So the whole of this thing is one string. I mean, there, that's one string, and that is the complete representation of that piece of music. Mm-hmm.
It's the beginning of the comma 2, that's a function. Where is it beginning?
There's actually 2 repeats in this thing, so in fact we'll have to look for maybe
so the second of the 2.
Yeah, I'll go and find it if you like. There's one. there's the, oops. Yeah. So there's a repeat, and there's the argument corresponding to it. And as I say, the point is that a comma has got no role in the syntax of the string of a music string, except to separate off arguments. So arguments can have integer arguments, floating point arguments, or functions. Music functions can have integer arguments, floating point arguments, or chunks of music. Okay.
And the bar just is a meta character. What does it do?
It does two things. One thing that it does is to just help you to input the stuff, because if you've put 16 bars in and you don't have the bars numbered, it's very hard to do. But the other thing it's doing is to put a little pulse of extra volume on that first note of the bar, so that the end result sounds a bit better. It probably wants to be parameterized in some way in the end, but at the moment you just get that pulse, and it doesn't cater for 6/8 time or anything like that. But you know. Okay, so here is the point of different representations. When a piece of music is being fed into accepted by the music generator, what it's doing is translating down into something that's a bit more Mathematica friendly, and then it's translating that down into actual sound notes, which can be sent out. So if I use the option result goes to music expression, I stop that process at the first step. So it's taken that original expression, that original string, and converted into this Mathematica expression. Now, if we just ignore the hold for a moment, the bulk of this is composed of PAR, which stands for parallel. So those are things that are going to be played at the same time. They're chords, and SEQ objects, which are things which are going to be played one after the other. And obviously they're nested in here because you've got sort of, well, the whole generality of a piece of music. The music is in that form is considerably more friendly to manipulate, but you can also convert it back again into the original string form. So there's no real problem here. First of all, it'll render using the same function as is used to render the strings. It just starts one layer down in the thing. Well, I won't play that because. You can also convert it back, which is quite useful as well. So if you took it down to the Mathematica friendly form and did something to it, and I'll give you an example of doing something to it in a moment, you could then take it back into the string form, which might be more readable if you were looking at the music. So here's one thing you can do. And remember, example has still got the music expression in rather than the original string. So one thing you can do is to look for things which are a note string and transpose them. So if I actually play that one, okay, and now I run this, what have I done? What have I done? Have I quit the kernel? Oh. Sorry? Let me Let's see if I've done that. No, I still seem to have a kernel.
Yeah, but you're
It appears to have restarted.
Don't know why that is. I think I'm going to just talk about it rather than worry about that. The point is that you can. I mean, this is a simple example. Once you've got the note strings all spliced out like that, you can transpose them using transpose note, and this identifies. It's a pattern. It's a predicate which applied to makes a pattern which will just pick out the note strings and ignore the directives and other things. So that's just a very simple example of the sort of manipulations that I imagine could be possible once you've got it in a reasonably Mathematica friendly form. I'm going to skip a load of this now because I just wanted to mention Music XML, because I think this is well, I was quite pleased when I discovered this, that you can take a piece of sheet music, scan it in, and there's a couple of packages, a couple of programs, SharpEye or Audiveris. The second one's free, but it doesn't seem quite as good or easy to use. But there's another version coming out soon, and I think it might sharpen up, if you pardon the pun, and that will produce XML in a format known as Music XML, and there's a command built into the MusicGenerator which will import Music XML. Now, I'm not going to give any promises that it'll import every single piece of Music XML you can come across, but it'll certainly do simple cases, and I'm, if there's interest, I'm willing to improve that. So the idea there, now I'm not sure whether this is going to work, is it? I hope it will. Let's just see. No.
Because you're out of your package.
Yeah, I'll go back. I better quit, otherwise I shall get to...
Or remove.
Well, I'm not going to remove it. There's too much scope for that going wrong. Yeah. Oh, for God's sake, what on earth's gone wrong here?
Did you quit after you'd loaded the package?
I've quitted, and then anyway, look, the important point is that that will, in the space of a few seconds, load a music string, and will load Music XML and return a string, so that it's an easier way of getting input into this system. Okay. You can, of course, access other instruments, and the MIDI instruments have either got numbers or they've got names, like piano, guitar, and so forth. Neither of those seem to be really ideal, because if you created a piece of music, maybe you wouldn't be quite sure what instruments you wanted to use. I mean, there are several different kinds of piano, for example, and all sorts of things of that sort. And so it seemed to me that it was far better to pick to use set instruments, to set the instruments that you thought you were going to use, and then to refer to them by number. You can refer to them by number, or you can use a prime mark to indicate the other instrument. So if you've got two instruments, you can just use the prime to indicate the second instrument. Okay, so the idea is to keep the notation as clean as possible, but sometimes you're going to have a situation where you want to have a whole section done with piano, and then maybe a whole section done with violin, for example. And there you can actually switch the default instrument to be the one you want, so you don't have to be so the notation is as neat as possible.